So there is a person somewhere right now staring at their own reflection, slightly stunned by what they are feeling, and slightly embarrassed that they ever doubted you in the first place. That is the very first image Spirit handed me when I opened this energy for you today, Virgo. Not someone casually moving on with their life after watching you from a distance. Someone caught completely off guard by the depth of their own response to a test they constructed themselves. They wanted proof. They wanted certainty before they would allow themselves to fully feel what they were already feeling. And you gave them that proof simply by being exactly who you already are, without ever knowing a test was even happening. I want to walk you through what this test actually was, why this person felt the need to create it, how you passed it without even trying, and what their embarrassment and falling feelings actually mean for what comes next. Stay with me through this entire reading because there is real richness here, and I do not want to rush past any of it. Let me describe what I felt the moment this energy opened, because the very first impression always carries important signal about the depth of what we are dealing with. I felt scrutiny initially, a careful, watchful energy that comes from someone who has been observing you with more attention than you likely realized. This was not casual interest. This was someone genuinely studying your character, watching how you respond under conditions that would reveal something true about who you actually are when circumstances became uncertain or difficult. I also felt surprise present in the energy immediately following that scrutiny, the specific quality of someone encountering a result that exceeded what they had quietly expected. Whatever this person anticipated when they set up the conditions for this test, what they actually witnessed in you moved past their expectations into something that has genuinely shaken their previous composure. I want to talk about why this person felt the need to test your loyalty in the first place, because understanding the root of this matters significantly to the full picture here. I am sensing past experience playing a significant role, likely involving someone who did not pass a similar test, someone whose loyalty proved conditional or unreliable when circumstances became inconvenient or difficult. This earlier disappointment taught this person to approach significant emotional investment with caution, to need evidence before allowing themselves to fully believe in someone's character, rather than simply taking words or early impressions at face value. I am also sensing genuine fear underneath this testing behavior, not fear of you specifically, but fear of being disappointed again in a way that would confirm their growing belief that genuine loyalty is rare or perhaps even unrealistic to expect from people. Testing, in this context, becomes a kind of protective strategy, a way of gathering evidence before risking the vulnerability of genuine emotional investment. I want to expand on this fear further because I think understanding its origin helps explain the depth of relief that followed when you passed. This is likely someone who experienced betrayal or disappointment significant enough that it altered their fundamental approach to trust. Rather than extending trust as a default starting point, as many people do in new connections, this person learned to withhold it until proven warranted, treating each new significant connection as something requiring verification before full emotional investment becomes possible. I also want to address the specific psychological mechanism at work here because I think it adds useful context. When someone has been hurt by misplaced trust before, their mind often develops a kind of protective hypervigilance, scanning for warning signs, creating situations that would reveal whether a new person shares the same concerning qualities as whoever hurt them previously. This is not a conscious, calculated strategy in most cases. It tends to operate more instinctively, almost automatically, as the nervous system attempts to prevent a repeat of previous pain through careful evaluation before allowing vulnerability. Let me speak to what this specific test actually looked like, because Spirit is being detailed about this, and I want to honor that detail. I am sensing this involved a situation where you had an opportunity to act in your own interest at someone else's expense, or perhaps a moment where staying loyal to this person required something from you that was not convenient or easy. This could have manifested as a moment of temptation, a situation where choosing differently would have been understandable, perhaps even expected, but where you chose consistency and integrity instead, without any awareness that your choice was being observed or evaluated. I am also sensing this test may have involved patience, a situation where this person created distance or uncertainty specifically to see whether you would remain steady or whether you would quickly move on to seek validation or connection elsewhere. Your response, whatever it specifically was, demonstrated a quality of consistency that this person was not entirely sure they would witness. I want to add additional dimensions to this test because Spirit is showing me this carried more than one component rather than a single isolated moment. I am sensing there may have also been an element involving how you spoke about this person when they were not present, whether through mutual friends or in other contexts, and whether your private words matched your public, direct interactions with them. People often reveal their true feelings more honestly when they believe they are not being observed, and I am sensing this person may have indirectly gathered information about how you discussed them when you believed there was nothing at stake. I am also sensing a component related to how you treated others during this period, not just how you treated this person directly. There is a particular kind of character revealed in how someone behaves toward people who cannot offer them anything, toward people in vulnerable or less powerful positions, and I am sensing this person observed your behavior in these contexts as part of building their overall picture of who you genuinely are beneath any performance you might offer specifically for their benefit. I want to address what it actually means that you passed this test without ever knowing it existed, because I think this distinction carries real significance. There is something particularly powerful about character that holds steady under observation it does not know is happening. People who are aware they are being tested often perform their best behavior deliberately, calculating what response would be most favorable. You did not have that awareness. What this person witnessed was not a performance crafted for their benefit. It was simply who you actually are, operating exactly the same way, whether anyone was watching closely or not at all. Does this feel like it is connecting to something in your own life right now, Virgo? Has there been a situation recently where you made a choice rooted in your own integrity, perhaps without realizing anyone significant was paying close attention to how you handled it? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear how this is resonating with your own experience. I want to speak to what watching you pass this test actually did to this person internally, because I think the emotional impact here deserves careful, honest examination. I am sensing genuine surprise first, the specific disorientation that comes from having your cautious expectations exceeded rather than confirmed. They had likely braced themselves, perhaps unconsciously, for a result that would validate their guarded approach to connection, evidence that would allow them to continue keeping a safe emotional distance. Instead, what they witnessed challenged that protective stance directly, forcing them to confront the possibility that genuine, consistent loyalty actually exists, and that you specifically embody it. I am also sensing something close to relief mixed in with that surprise, a quiet, almost overwhelming sense that maybe their previous disappointments do not have to define what is possible going forward. This relief, while genuinely positive, also creates its own vulnerability because it means allowing themselves to feel something they had been carefully guarding against. I want to talk about the embarrassment specifically because this word matters and deserves real attention. I am sensing this person feels somewhat exposed by the intensity of what they are now feeling toward you, particularly given the context of how it developed. There is something uncomfortable from their perspective about realizing they constructed a test in the first place, that their feelings did not arrive simply and naturally, but required this layer of careful evaluation before they would allow themselves to acknowledge them fully. This awareness of their own guardedness, now visible to themselves in retrospect, produces a kind of self-conscious discomfort. I am also sensing embarrassment connected to the sheer depth of what they are now experiencing, a falling that feels larger and faster than what they anticipated or feel fully prepared to manage. There is a vulnerability in caring this much about someone, especially after having maintained careful emotional distance for what may have been a significant period. This person is not accustomed to feeling this exposed, and that unfamiliarity itself contributes to their current sense of embarrassment. I want to expand on this embarrassment further because I think it carries layers worth examining individually. There is embarrassment about the falling itself, the sheer intensity of feeling that has emerged faster and more completely than this person's usual cautious approach to connection would typically allow. There is also embarrassment about what this falling reveals regarding their own previous certainty, the confidence they may have projected about being unaffected, about not needing or wanting significant emotional investment, now standing in direct contradiction to what they are actually experiencing internally. I am also sensing a more specific kind of embarrassment connected to anyone who witnessed their previous guardedness, friends or family who may have heard them speak confidently about not being interested in significant emotional vulnerability, who would now notice the obvious contradiction between those previous statements and their current visible preoccupation with you. This social dimension of embarrassment, the discomfort of potentially appearing inconsistent to people who know them well, adds another layer to what they are currently navigating internally. Inhale with me for a moment, Virgo. I want to address something important about how this person has been behaving externally while internally experiencing this significant shift, because I think the contrast here matters. I am sensing they have likely been trying to maintain their usual composed exterior, even as internally they are processing something genuinely significant. This means you may not have fully noticed the depth of what is happening on their end, because they have been working to keep their outward behavior consistent with how they presented themselves before this internal shift began. This kind of careful management, while understandable given their embarrassment, also means the full truth of what they feel has not yet become visible to you. I want to speak to what is building now, because Spirit is showing me genuine movement rather than this person remaining permanently stuck in private, embarrassed processing. I am sensing the intensity of what they feel is becoming increasingly difficult to fully contain behind their usual composed exterior. Falling this hard, even while trying to maintain careful management of the outward expression of those feelings, tends to eventually require some kind of release or acknowledgement. I am sensing this person is approaching a point where continuing to hide the depth of what they feel becomes more uncomfortable than the vulnerability of finally revealing it. I want to expand on this building pressure further, because I think it explains why resolution feels close rather than indefinitely delayed. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that develops when someone spends significant energy managing the gap between their internal experience and their external presentation. This management requires constant effort, vigilance against accidental slips, careful moderation of tone and expression in every interaction with you. As feelings continue to deepen rather than fade, the energy required to maintain this careful management increases correspondingly until the cost of continued concealment begins to exceed whatever protection it was originally meant to provide. I am also sensing specific triggers that are likely to accelerate this person's movement toward acknowledgement. Moments when other people comment on their changed behavior, however subtly, forcing some kind of internal reckoning with how visible their feelings have actually become despite their efforts at containment. Moments of genuine connection with you that feel too significant to continue treating casually. These accumulating pressures are building toward the threshold where revelation becomes the more comfortable option compared to continued concealment. I want to describe what this revelation might actually look like when it happens, because I think the practical shape of it matters. For some of you, this is going to come through a moment of unexpected honesty, perhaps during a conversation that starts casually but shifts into something more vulnerable as this person finds themselves unable to continue containing what they feel. I am sensing genuine nervousness on their end leading up to this, the specific discomfort of someone who is not accustomed to revealing this much of their internal world to another person. For others, this might unfold more gradually through small shifts in their behavior that become increasingly difficult for them to fully disguise, a warmth in their tone that exceeds their usual reserve, a quality of attention that lingers slightly longer than their typical composed interactions would suggest. These small signals, accumulating over time, may eventually lead to a more direct conversation once the gap between their internal experience and their external presentation becomes too significant to continue managing. I want to address something honest here about why this person tested you in the first place, because I think this deserves balanced examination rather than only celebrating the outcome. While I understand the protective instinct behind testing, I also want you to hold space for your own feelings about having been evaluated without your knowledge or consent. Even when someone's intentions stem from genuine past hurt rather than malice, being tested without awareness can feel uncomfortable once you understand it occurred. You are allowed to feel some complexity about this, appreciation for the genuine feelings that resulted, alongside some reservation about the method through which this person arrived at trusting you. Let me speak to what genuine partnership with this person might require going forward, given this particular origin story. If this connection continues to develop, I want you to watch for whether this person can move past needing to test or evaluate you covertly and instead develop the capacity for direct, honest communication about their fears and uncertainties. Testing, even when it produces a favorable result once, is not a sustainable foundation for long-term connection. Genuine trust requires vulnerability expressed directly rather than gathered indirectly through unknown evaluations. I want you to pay attention to whether this person, as the relationship potentially develops, begins to communicate openly about their concerns, rather than continuing to quietly observe and judge from a protected distance. This shift from covert evaluation to direct, honest expression is what would indicate genuine growth on their part, rather than simply a single instance of relief after one successful test. I want to expand on this further because I think the distinction between a single moment of relief and genuine, sustained growth matters significantly here. Passing one test, even successfully, does not automatically mean this person's underlying pattern of needing evidence before trusting has fully resolved. There is a real possibility that, as this connection develops further, new uncertainties or fears could trigger similar testing behavior again, perhaps in different forms than the original evaluation. Watch for whether this person becomes increasingly transparent about their internal process over time, sharing their fears and uncertainties directly with you rather than continuing to silently observe and judge before deciding whether to extend further trust. I also want to address what healthy accountability might look like if you choose to address the testing directly with this person. A genuinely self-aware response would likely include acknowledgement that testing without your knowledge was not entirely fair to you, paired with honest explanation of the fear that drove this behavior, rather than simply justifying the test as necessary without any consideration of your own experience or right to have been approached more directly from the beginning. I want to speak to your own role in this dynamic because I do not want you to feel solely like the subject of someone else's psychological process without your own agency in how this unfolds. You are allowed to set the pace of how openly you receive this person's eventual revelation, regardless of how long they took to arrive at trusting you. You are allowed to ask questions about why they felt the need to test you in this way, and to expect honest, thoughtful answers, rather than simply accepting their feelings as sufficient explanation on their own. Your own comfort and clarity matter just as much in this unfolding story as their internal journey toward acknowledging what they feel. I want to expand on this further because I think it is one of the more important pieces of guidance in this entire reading. There can be a temptation when learning that someone has fallen significantly for you to focus entirely on validating and reassuring their feelings, rather than ensuring your own needs and questions receive equal attention. I want you to resist that temptation here. Your right to understand the full context of how this connection developed, including the testing that preceded their current feelings, deserves genuine space in whatever conversation eventually unfolds between you. I also want to acknowledge that you may feel a mixture of flattery and discomfort as this situation continues to develop, and both reactions are entirely valid simultaneously. Being genuinely admired and falling for by someone feels good in many respects. Learning you were evaluated without your knowledge can feel less comfortable, even when the outcome was favorable. You do not need to resolve this mixture of feelings quickly or pretend toward only the positive emotion. Give yourself permission to sit with the full complexity of your own response as this story continues to unfold. As I bring this reading toward its close, I want to leave you with the complete picture Spirit shared today. Someone tested your loyalty, driven by past disappointment and genuine fear of being hurt again, and watching you pass that test without ever knowing it occurred has produced a depth of feeling in them that they are now finding difficult to contain behind their usual composed exterior. Their embarrassment comes from the vulnerability of falling this hard, particularly after having maintained careful guardedness for what may have been significant time. As this becomes visible to you, whether through gradual signals or eventual direct conversation, receive it with openness if that feels right, while also honoring your own feelings about the testing itself and requiring genuine, direct communication going forward rather than continued covert evaluation. If this reading resonated with you today, please share it with a Virgo who might be navigating something similar in their own life right now. And let me know in the comments if someone specific came to mind while listening to this. I read every comment and I carry your stories with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, you pass simply by being yourself, and now someone is learning what it actually means to fall for something real.